Well, hi and welcome to another RiderCamTV video, and today I'm going to be talking about these bad boys, these Metzeler Karoo Street Tyres on my GS. They don't have to look knobbly, but Metzeler make Karoo tyres, and the Karoo tyres normally are on the off-road bikes and they're really knobbly, so it'll be interesting to see whether these are quiet, what they handle like on the road. But the Karoo Street is apparently the latest product in the Karoo family, named after the semi-desert national region of South Africa. Quite strange, bit of information there for you. And they're apparently outstanding on-road performance with a knobbly tread pattern. They're built of a high silica compound to achieve a high level of grip on the road, both in dry and wet conditions. And they reckon that excellent traction on dirt with on-road agility, top cornering precision and stability throughout the tyre's life, and a constant contact patch enables good integration with electronic rider aids. So, what we're going to do is, rather than stand here and talk about the tyres, we're going to get out and see what they're like. Now, I've got to say a big thank you to Mike at Metzeler for sending these tyres down so quickly after they were available in the UK for us to put on the bike and see what they're like. And very first impressions of doing absolutely no speed at all, they don't seem to be any more uncomfortable than the Tourance Next. Now these tyres, they're built of that high silica compound apparently to give excellent grip in both wet and dry weather, and give really excellent on-road performance as well as a little bit of off-road performance as well. Because on the off-road bikes, certainly the BMW off-road bikes, these are the tyres that they have. So it'd be quite interesting to see about road noise. Now I am noticing, I mean these are brand new tyres, so I'm not going to push it. Not going to push it yet on the tyres. I need to be able to get rid of the grease and stuff that's on new tyres before I start pushing around corners and that sort of stuff. But first impressions, they just seem just as smooth as the Tourance Next and the RoadTec 01s, despite having that more open tread pattern, which is, you know, is quite good for that open tread pattern to still give you such a smooth ride, I guess. I have noticed, now I don't know whether it's me being a little bit picky, I have noticed that it does seem as though they might be a little bit noisier than the Tourance Next. I am getting a bit of a rolling road noise coming through that I can't remember hearing before. Yes, they have got a little bit of a whistle, but I don't think that that's going to be too much to get used to. But who knows, it might be a little bit too much for me to stomach on these tyres, I'm not sure. So we'll have to see what happens on an update after a couple of thousand miles with the tyres on. Certainly, agility wise, they don't feel any different than any other tyre that I've had on, and they certainly feel as though they're gripping quite nicely. And like I said, these are brand new tyres, and you know, as I push it left and right, I feel like I've got a real good grip on these tyres. So that's going to give me a lot of confidence with riding these tyres on the road. But also, it'd be interesting to see what these tyres are like on a bit of, not necessarily green laning, because I don't think that they're suited so much to green laning, but a little bit of off-roading on a dirt tracks, that sort of stuff. If we can find some over the next few weeks, perhaps we'll give them a go. Certainly feel very smooth, and turning, I did notice that when I went round that right hand bend round the roundabout, I did have a little bit more resistance than I can remember having on the Tourance Next when I was feeding the handlebars round to get around the corner. But like I say, you know, how much of this is me being just a little bit picky of a brand new tyre and knowing that they're a brand new tyre. It's almost like the placebo effect, really, of knowing that they're on there, and is that why these characteristics have changed quite a bit. They don't feel any different than the RoadTecs, to be honest, and if they're half as good as the RoadTecs, but give me the ability that if I need to or want to go off-road slightly, that I can with confidence. That's all I'm looking for. Now, as you know, when we're riding with our tyres, Mark and I both like to change our tyres at a reasonable tread depth. We don't really like going any less than 3 mil, purely because it's safer to do that. You know, if you think about the tyres being on the road, they're the only thing that's giving you grip. You can use your brakes, you can have as many aids as you want on your motorbike, but to go around a corner, to brake, to keep you stuck on the road, they're the only thing that is on the road. And these guys that make tyres, like Metzeler and all of the other names, all of the other brands that make tyres, you know, they're all experts in what they do. They really are, in their own way. It's just that Mark and I seem to prefer the Metzeler brand purely because they just suit what we want. You know, we do an awful lot of Tourance, and 99% of our riding is done on the road. And we need to be able to make sure that we've got really good mileage out of our tyres, because otherwise we'd be spending so much money every year changing tyres. We do about 25,000 miles a year, and most of it abroad. So we need to be able to make sure that we've got good tyres that we can rely on, tyres that we can trust, but also tyres that aren't going to break the bank. And you know, it's like a car. You can buy really cheap tyres, you can buy them and they'll be fine, but the moment that you're pushing them just a little bit too hard, is that when they're not as good. They do say, you know, the old adage is you get what you pay for, and I think that's right in a great many circumstances, that you do actually get what you pay for. And certainly within tyres, I don't like scrimping and saving on tyres. I would rather, even on my car, but especially on my bike, have the best tyres that I can afford, because like I said, they are the only thing that is, and it's a tiny little patch, but they're the only thing that is in connection with the road when you're riding. And certainly when you're pushing it, when you're having a great day, when you're out in the rain, when you're out in any weather, you want to be able to rely on those tyres and make sure that they're going to aid your riding, and that you know how they're going to behave, because every tyre seems to behave in a slightly different way. So it'd be interesting to see how I get used to these tyres, whether they remain on this bike or whether they aren't suitable for my sort of riding. Who knows? The only way to know is to try them and see how we get on. But the very, very first impressions are that they seem very good. I've got good grip, as I said before. Certainly seem to be able to chuck the bike about. And one thing I have noticed is if I just chuck my bike like that, now I know it's strange to say, but when you're pushing on the handlebars and the bike's moving left and right, it does feel that these tyres are sticking to the road a little bit more, because I can feel that the bike is moving quite violently, in a good way, but quite violently, over to one side and the other when I'm pushing the handlebars. Now some people might say, well, that's because you are moving the handlebars quite violently, and yet that could be the case. And again, I go back to, is it because I've got these tyres on here that I'm thinking that these are causing all of these, not issues, but all of these things that I'm feeling? Or is it actually the fact that they're new tyres and they need to be run in? Or is it actually that they are tyres and they're doing what these tyres are designed to do? I don't know, only time will tell. But I like the tread pattern. The tread pattern looks really nice, and I know it's silly to say, but when you look at your bike, you need to make sure that your bike is going to do what you want it to do. I also like the bike to look good. I don't think there's a rider out there that doesn't have a bike because it looks good. Certainly bikers that go out on their bike, I mean, you know, if you've got a bike for your job and you get given that bike for your job, perhaps you don't like that bike as much as you would if it was your own. But you know, 99% of bikers, I would guess, actually are in love with their bike, and that's not only in the way that it behaves and how it works and what enjoyment it brings to you, but also the enjoyment that it brings to you when you're looking at it. And tyres are one of those big things. You know, I don't want massive knobbly tyres on this bike. It's not being used primarily for off-road, although what I am pleased about is that these tyres apparently are excellent on-road, but also very, very good off-road. And because I don't do very much off-road, and obviously you would have seen last week's video about me taking part in the GS Challenge, and that was my very, very, very small but first taster in riding off-road, and I expect you could tell by my face and my voice that I'm so excited that I've done some off-roading, only, you know, a fraction of what anybody else has done. But oh my gosh, I so enjoyed it, and I've fallen in love with this bike again. I hadn't fallen out of love with it, but it's a workhorse, it does what I want it to do. But I fell in love with it a little bit more in a way that I never thought that I would, because it proved to me that the bike is capable of so much more than the rider is capable of, and the rider being me, because I've never done any off-road, so to be confident off-road was quite strange. But I tell you what, you know, these tyres are quite good. I don't feel that they're losing grip. Now, it is a very, very dry day. Thankfully in Cornwall we do have some dry days, they're far and few between, and I'm out on the bike. But I am getting quite a lot of road noise. I'm not sure whether you can hear it, but I am getting quite a lot of road noise, and a lot more road noise than I would get and did get off my Tourance Next. So, you know, is the offset of being able to have tyres that will be good on road but also very good off-road, is that going to be enough for me to be able to put up with the extra noise? Not sure. Time will tell. It might be one of those things that I actually get used to and don't notice in the end, but because the Tourance Next tyres I had on before was so quiet, there's definitely a whirring noise with these tyres, but that could go because these are so new. When they're broken a little bit, perhaps it will ease up and get a little bit quieter, but for, you know, first impressions, they are a little bit more noisy than my other tyres, and a little bit heavier. And I tell you what, it sounds really strange saying that they're a heavy tyre. They feel heavier when I'm turning. So when I'm counter steering, whichever way I'm counter steering, it feels like the grip is so much more on the road, and it makes me feel like they're a heavier tyre. Because one thing that I found with the GS, certainly on the road, is that at very, very slow speed manoeuvring, like in traffic lights, you know, when you're having a bit of a game with yourself that you don't want to put your foot down, that you want to creep up to the traffic lights and that sort of stuff, that the handlebars are so wide apart that just a tiny movement, and it feels like that you're over the other side of the road even though you're not. And I work very hard, as anal as it might sound, I work very hard that every ride that I ride is improved, and I kind of try and learn from mistakes that I've made, because I make so many mistakes. Like other people, I am not perfect whatsoever, and I've got loads to learn about riding. But the RT was much heavier on the front, and I found it much more planted on a slow speed manoeuvring style of riding, that just a tiny movement in the handlebars didn't make you feel as though you were right over the other side of the road, or didn't look as dirty in your line, if that makes sense. So, you know, perhaps these tyres have got a lot more to offer than just providing excellent grip on road and off road. And yes, we're going to try that, because we will be out in the rain at some point, and we've only done what, 5-6 miles on these tyres so far, so it's way too early to say these are good or these are bad. But there are tiny little characteristics that I'm trying to explain, and I hope it's coming across okay, that I've noticed, like with the heaviness on the steering, that when I'm leaning into the corner, they're not it's not like it's squared off, but almost that feeling at the moment that when you lean into a corner they feel like they're squared off, and they're not, because they're brand spanking new tyres. The weights are all done, they've been fitted by BMW for me, so there's no problem there, but they just feel like when you're being when you're tipped into a corner, that they kind of get to a point and then tip a little bit further. Perhaps something for me to get used to, but very, very first impressions. A little bit noisier than the Tourance Next, and I need to work out over the next few thousand miles before I do a next update whether those things, whether that noise is something that I'm willing to put up with above the Tourance Next to keep the versatility of being able to go off-road at some point on this bike or not. See whether that characteristics of tipping into the corner and that sort of thing, and the sort of the heaviness on the steering, certainly on the front when going into corners and things, I wonder whether that will go or whether it's just something that I need to get used to. And of course, what are they going to be like in the rain? They feel good even after a very few miles in the dry. They feel really good, and they feel like they're sticking to the road really well. But that's the dry. It'd be really interesting to see whether it does actually do it in the wet. And what I'll probably do, if I can, is when it does rain, and you can bet your bottom dollar that in Cornwall it will rain at some point soon, I'll get out on the bike and go through the rain and just see how they behave, and then bring you another update. And my plan for these tyres is not just to stop at one video, is to just give a really balanced view of how I'm getting on with the tyre. I'm in no way an expert at how tyres are manufactured. The only thing that I can talk about is the way that they behave, the way that I feel about them, what they sound like, what they behave like, how I feel using them, and kind of bring that honest kind of view to you as a viewer. So don't expect any technical details about how much of the tyre is touching the ground, because you won't get it. It's just a how am I getting on with this tyre kind of view. So if you've liked the video, give us a massive thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you in the next video.